I'm standing here with Jonathan Klinger of Haggerty Insurance, and he's made it his mission to drive this 1930 Ford Model A for an entire year as his only transportation in a project he's calling 365 Days of A. Jonathan, thanks so much for coming down and talking to us today.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Yeah, beautiful car you've got here. This is a two-door sedan Model A, correct?
Correct, yes.
Yeah. How did you decide on that body style? Because I know Ford offered a lot of different models back then.
Yes, they did. Yeah, there was about half a dozen different body styles for that year Model A, and I wanted a two-door sedan for two reasons. One, I've always liked the looks of it, and two, for driving a vehicle every day for a year. In northern Michigan, obviously, you want something that's a close car instead of like a roadster. But if I had to go back and pick a car over again, I would actually pick a four-door sedan because, you know, when you're dealing with groceries or luggage or whatever, it'd be nice to have that rear set of doors. Definitely,
definitely. Now, how did you decide on a Ford Model A over another car of the era? What made you pick this one?
Well, the beauty of a Model A, if you've never owned an old car, they're simple, they're affordable, and there's a lot of parts available. They made just over 5 million of them, you know, when they were new. And so there's a lot of them still around, and consequently there's a lot of companies that manufacture replacement parts just for Model A's. So
that's got to be good when you're out on the road.
Exactly.
You know that there's a replacement part available if you lose a water pump or something.
Yep, it's only an overnight shipping charge away.
Yeah, definitely. So what have you done to the car? I mean, it looks pretty stock sitting here right now.
Yeah, purchased this car specifically for this project. I found it in Craigslist, and as you see it, it's largely how it would have rolled off the factory floor. There are a few modifications that we did to it early on. It has, when I purchased it, it had plate glass all the way around, so for obvious reasons I wanted to have safety glass.
Yeah. Installed
seat belts. Believe it or not, those are radial tires. Coker Tire just came out with a line of radials in that size, and an electric wiper motor. And actually the one last thing is those modern style shocks.
So the replacements for those shocks are what, about $200 a piece?
Yes, yeah, they are not cheap.
One at each corner of the vehicle. It gets expensive.
Yeah, and believe it or not, this car did not have any shocks on it when I purchased it, so that was an interesting ride.
Definitely. So talk about the suspension is stock. This has got basically like a buggy spring setup from way back then.
Exactly. Transverse springs, four-wheel mechanical brakes, which was an improvement when this came out in 1928. You know, for the Model Ts only had two-wheel brakes. And other than that, I mean, it's as primitive as it seems to a person who's not familiar with old cars. It's actually essentially a modern car. You know, four-wheel brakes, conventional manual transmission, you know, engine mounted in front, and of course a lot of people are going to say, what's modern about this? But it's got the ingredients.
The features are there.
Exactly.
You're looking for.
It's the ingredients of a modern car.
Yeah. So I'm dying to see what's under the hood. I know it's a big flathead four-cylinder engine, but tell us about it.
I don't know if big's the right word, but I like to call it mighty.
The mighty Model A.
The mighty Model A. Yeah, this is a four-cylinder L-head engine. It develops about 40 horsepower.
Ooh. So you do some burnouts with it then?
No. No. Once in a while in the snow, I was able to get the tires to spin, but otherwise, there's not an excess amount of power there. But you know, one thing that you find interesting, there's no air cleaner on this. They didn't have an air cleaner when they were new, and if you think about these cars running down dirt roads, you know, ingesting bugs and all that stuff, and you can actually put an air cleaner on these, but I've chosen not to, because first of all, the air is cleaner, believe it or not, than what it would have been, you know, running around when this car was new, just because of the dust on the roads.
Fewer dirt roads today.
Exactly. But the other reason is occasionally gas will drip out of this carburetor with it being an updraft, and if you have gas dripping into a paper element air filter,
in a hot engine bay,
and then it just happens to backfire, you know, which is not a common occurrence, but it could.
Yeah.
That just, things might get a little more exciting than I want them to.
Especially you've got the fuel tank is actually located up at the cowl here, isn't it?
Yep.
Because there's no fuel pump, it's just a gravity feed right down.
Exactly. You know, Henry Ford had kind of the same philosophy with the Model A as he did in the Model T and any of his previous vehicles, is that he wanted a simple, reliable, and affordable vehicle that the average working family could afford. And because of that, you know, there's a lot of things that make up that philosophy of being a simple car. One of them being the gas tank mounted right up here. There's no fuel pump to go wrong, so it's just gravity feed down to the carburetor, and it works great.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned reliability. How many times has this left you stranded, if at all? on your journey? Because you're about almost a year in now, right?
Close to it, yep. I'm about 10 months in. I put about 12,000 miles on it since last October. I've been on the side of the road twice, both times being electrical issues. And
same as modern cars then.
Exactly. and fortunately I was close to home. You know, I called a flatbed tow truck, called it back home, because when it comes to working on cars, the electrical system is my weakest area of expertise. And so, you know, I basically know that you don't want to let the smoke out of the wires, and I didn't really want to experiment with that on the side of the road, so I chose to have it hauled home. But otherwise, it's been a very reliable car. I did swap an engine out about 3 months ago. I pulled it into the shop with the engine, it was running, but it had developed a crack in the block, and it wasn't because it froze. It just, you know, 81-year-old cast iron. It just, for whatever reason, decided to let go then, and I've kept that original engine, and it's fixable, and I plan on rebuilding it, but for the sake of me driving this every day, I swapped in a different short block.
Okay, get you down the road then.
Exactly.
So it's been pretty reliable. How's the comfort? These cars didn't have a lot of features on them. No air conditioning, no radio,
no
mechanical brakes. I mean, this is bare bones.
No power steering, no heated seats, I mean,
the list goes on.
Yeah, the list goes on and on and on if you wanted to compare it to a modern car. But comfort-wise, you know, a lot of people thought, my word, how did you get through the winter? No heater, because these did not come from the factory with a heater.
Wow.
However, there were heater kits available for them when they were new. It's an exhaust manifold heater. I had one of those on. It worked great. Actually, if I was in it for more than an hour, I had to crack the windows because it would get so warm in there. But I did have to adjust to not having a radio, and of course, you know, this time of the year with it being as warm and as humid as it has been, I definitely noticed that it doesn't have air conditioning. But, you know, as far as the basic comforts, the seat is plenty comfortable, and, you know, even someone our height, you know, you can be comfortable in it. And actually, the back seat is tremendously roomy. You know, if you think about when these cars were made new, especially higher end cars of this era, it was more about passenger comfort than driver comfort. You know, in those days, it was a luxury to be driven in an automobile, not so much to drive an automobile. So
hence the mechanical brakes and the steering.
Exactly. So it actually, the rear seat has far more legroom. It's far more comfortable, and so the passengers get a better experience.
Can you give us a glimpse in there?
Absolutely.
Show us what it was like driving in 1930.
Absolutely. Well, if you can excuse the cup holder with all of my stuff in it, that is a modern add-on. This is what it is. It's just very Spartan. You know, like I said, I added the seat belts, but you know, with this being a two-door sedan, you know, these two seats will fold forward and you can get into the rear. These nice big windows roll all the way down.
Wow, that's nice on a 90-degree day.
It's nice on a 90-degree day, and that's also how I load my groceries. Right through there.
Who needs a hatchback when you've got a gigantic side window? Exactly.
Well, you know, it's interesting. The term "the trunk" in a modern car actually was a carryover from cars of this era. They literally would mount a rack back here and affix a trunk to it.
A giant box,
So the trunk that, you know, like in your grandparents' attic, that just went on the back of the car, and that was the trunk. And it was, you know, into the 40s, automakers, late 30s, early 40s, they started integrating a storage compartment into the body called the trunk.
Definitely, definitely.
But another modification I've done, and I highly recommend it to anybody who's driving an old car on modern roads, is these are actually LED inserts. Still 6-volt, but they light up so much better than what the originals do, and that just makes sense from a safety standpoint. I installed those on my first trip to Chicago. So.
Okay. So you mentioned you kept it 6-volt. That's the stock configuration then. And how are those headlights at night? They can't be like a projector beam today, I wouldn't think.
Well, it's all relative. I own a 1919 Model T Ford pickup that I've restored, and the only purpose those headlights serve is they let somebody else know there's something in the road. So these are far better. So again, I actually was expecting headlights like that, and I was pleasantly surprised. That being said, you know, they're not like modern headlights. You just get used to it, but you're also not driving 80 miles an hour, you know. So at 45 or 50 miles an hour, you're not out driving the speed of your headlights.
Exactly. What is the top speed on this car? Or how fast have you taken it?
Well, it will top out at 65 miles an hour, believe it or not.
Wow.
I don't do that that often, but 50 is a comfortable cruising speed. It's not abusing the car.
Definitely.
And I also feel like you can stop, because remember, you have to stop too.
Definitely, with those mechanical brakes.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, Jonathan Klinger, Hegarty Insurance, thanks so much for stopping by.
Absolutely.
Showing us your beautiful Model A. Where can people learn more about it?
Well, You can follow along at 365daysofa.com. Daily blog entries with photos and videos and all of my misadventures.
Cool. Thanks so much.